York City. We hope you're enjoying your amazing day here at the Small Business Expo. We are ready to kick off our 2 p.m. keynote presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, presented by Smart Sites co-founder. Let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Alex Melen, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, give it up for Alex.
Hello, everyone. Right up here. Great to be here. I think this is my first speaking engagement back in New York City since COVID started, so excited to be here. Big applause to everyone. So a round of applause to everyone who came out here today. Great to see the people coming out here. It's great to see small businesses back in action in New York City, and attending sessions like this to really learn, and conferences like this to really learn and grow. And I think it's good to be back here. Good to be back on stage. So we have a great session for you today. I'm going to be talking about SEO. How many know, raise of hands, how many know what SEO stands for? Perfect, we have 3/4 of the room, search engine optimization. So we're going to be talking about how to help your website show up better on search engines. And obviously Google being the biggest one of them, but the strategies we're going to be discussing is really for all search engines. Perfect, so we're already ahead of the game with so many people here, at least being familiar with the topic. Cool, before I jump in, a little bit about myself, just so you know where I'm coming from. So on your left, on my right, on your left is a picture of me when I just started getting involved in computers and technology. The picture is actually from 1991. And location-wise is, I was in Washington Heights, New York, so not too far from here, and actually coming in today, I live in New Jersey now, coming in today actually took the subway through Washington Heights, so obviously changed a lot since 1991, but I've been involved in technology and computers for a very long time. Those of you who have been as well, that's I-386 computer there, so that's before you could start taking parts out, right? I-486, they became modular, you could take the RAM out. These are the ones where everything was still soldered in, so good old early 90s. I started my first company, T35 Hosting, back in 1997. There was one of the first free web hosting providers, so again, those have been around in the space back then. It was around the same time as GeoCities, Hypermark, Tripod, companies like that. And the idea was to be able to provide a place on the internet for anyone, individual business, or anyone out there that wanted it for free and have it accessed all over the world. So although now it sounds like a very common thing and something everyone can do today, back then it was actually very difficult and it was very novel to be able to do that. So that actually was 1997, earlier than another company you might have heard of called Google. Who here knows when Google was founded? Anyone want to take a guess? 98, yes. So Google was actually founded at the end of 1998, I believe late September. So a lot of people, especially these days, it feels like Google's been around forever, right? Google actually entered the scene in the late 90s and obviously became a huge success over the last 20 years. Later on in the timeline, Backlink Build is a company my brother started while in college in Cornell. So Backlink Build was one of the first SEO companies, which later we merged everything over to Smart Sites, which is the company that we run today. So I've been involved in the tech space for a very, very long time and SEO space for a very long time as well. Through both my personal experiences and through Smart Sites, I got to learn a lot about the space and how a lot of these things work and how to actually be successful online. And that's what we do at Smart Sites. We help businesses be successful online. And I'm going to try to distill a lot of those learnings and really SEO best practices that I've learned over the last 20 plus years for you guys today in the next 30 to 35 minutes. Or at least I'll do my best. Before we jump in, a little bit about Smart Sites. So Smart Sites, we now have actually almost 250 full-time employees. We'll be at 250 before the end of October. If you search about us online, we have hundreds and hundreds of 5-star reviews, and we're always growing. We've been doubling in size every 18 months or so. So 18 months from today, we'll hopefully be at 500 employees. And we really, as a company, we love what we do, and we do tons and tons of both SEM and SEO. And again, I have a lot of really good learnings and data that we use ourselves internally that I'll be sharing with you guys today. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to talk about why is SEO important. And then we're going to talk about the two different types of SEO, right? There's the local pack, which is the people know it more as the Google Maps, right? And then we're going to talk about the actual organic listings that usually come below the Google Maps. So they're both different, and we're going to cover both of those today. And then we're going to talk about measuring results. Before I jump into the session, just two quick things. Number one, not in this slide, but most slides have a page number on your right. If you have any questions, I'm going to leave a bunch of time at the end for questions because I want this to be as interactive as possible. I want you guys to walk away learning something and not just listening to me talk. So please, if you have a question about a slide, write down the number, and then I could go back to that slide during the Q&A. Number two, I'm going to have my contact information at the end, so you could take I'll show you how to do it, but you could do a QR code and then connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you want the slides from this deck and any information I present today, more than happy to send it to you so you don't have to spend your entire time trying to reproduce the charts, graphs, and data that I'm going to have up here. I'd rather you be listening to what I'm saying, and then I'll more than happy to send the deck to everyone. All right, jumping in. And I apologize in advance, I talk very quick. But again, if you don't understand something or have a question, definitely jot it down, and at the end we'll definitely cover it. All right, why is SEO important? So I actually stole this slide from our Director of Business Development, Matthew Purpose, who has a workshop right after this keynote that I encourage you guys to go and watch as well. And if you like these stats, check out the websites. It's Internet Live Stats, really, really cool data. So why is SEO important? There's actually, when this was taken, I think a couple weeks ago, billions of Internet users out there, right? That's crazy to say, right? There's billions of Internet users, and there's billions of Google searches that happen every day. Usually it ranges from 6 to 6.5 billion Google searches. And if we take a moment to think about that, Google's not necessarily the primary search engine in all countries either. So, right, it's very US-centric. In Russia, they have Yandex. They have different competitors in different countries. So this is global, but very much a big part of this comes from the US. So why is SEO important? All these people are out there looking for a business, right? It's become over the last couple of years the go-to to find any information, find any business, to really find anything on the internet. And that's really changed. And again, as you guys saw from my picture at the start, I've been involved in this space for a really, really long time, and I've really seen this change drastically over the last 20 years or even 10 years. And I'll give you guys an example. If, let's say after you're here at the Small Business Expo, after the Small Business Expo, you go home, whether you have an apartment or a house, you walk in, and you have in your kitchen the pipes leaking, right? There's water all over the floor, pipes leaking. What is your first instinct to do? So try to think through that scenario. What is that first thing you're gonna do? I bet that 9 out of 10 of you would take out your cell phone and search plumber near me, right? That behavior would not be like that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? I've been involved in the space for a long time, and I worked for Publicis for a couple of years before starting Smart Sites. We did a lot of research studies, and consumer behaviors back then were not like that, right? If you think about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the instinctual reaction to any time you needed a service or any kind of help would be number 1, friends and family, number 2, Yellow Pages. How many of you guys have used the Yellow Pages this year? This year. How many of you have used the Yellow Pages before? So for those that are not looking around the room, I'll summarize the results. Everyone has used the Yellow Pages before. Nobody has used it this year. And that is why SEO is important. That should be the end of my speech. That's it. So on top of billions in searches, so what's interesting is, so the amount of searches are growing every day. Again, you could go, where's my back thing? The website's on the bottom. You could go to the website and check it out and see how many searches are happening this specific day. But with billions of searches happening each day, what's interesting is 15% of all searches every day are unique. That means Google has never seen these searches. Isn't that interesting? So billions of things are being searched, and there's still 15% that have never been searched before every single day. So what does that mean? You have to be really thinking about search behavior and how people are finding you. And search behavior itself has really evolved, I want to say over the last 10 years, but most dramatically over the last 2 years because of COVID. Where, like I mentioned in my example with the plumber, where before people would go to search to really find a service, and that was kind of the end goal, right? My pipe's leaking, I need a plumber. People are now turning to search to do a lot of other type of activity. It's not just I'm there, find a service, call a service, complete the transaction, right? People are now there going to explore, research, and plan. 200 increase in searches for places to visit near me. So that's people searching not for a specific place, but generally trying to find places. 200% increase in trading apps, that's a more recent trend. 20 times increase in search interest for support local businesses. So not only people trying to support local businesses and looking for local business, they're literally searching, how can I support local businesses? And that's the majority of the people in the room here, right? So that's really been a strong search trend, especially through COVID. And generally speaking, the search behaviors have really evolved that search is now an integral part of the entire decision process, purchase cycle, literally everything people do. Consumer journey is now more unpredictable than ever before, right? Like I said, people use it discovery, research, consideration, the entire gamut. Personally, I do a lot of speaking in the automotive space. So the automotive consumer journey has gone from, and you could think about it yourself, right? Especially for those who purchased a car more than 20 years ago, the purchase journey has been from I talked to a friend or family and he recommended this car, or I heard this dealership on the radio or TV. I came in, I test drove, I drove away, right? That was the consumer journey for automotive 20 years ago. These days, and I don't have it here with me, but I have the chart for automotive. Consumer journey for automotive now has, I think, 28 different steps, right? People research on YouTube, they email, they search on Google, they check out the OEM website, check out dealer website, check out car and driver car comparisons, go into a dealership, go out of the dealership, check the dealership's reviews. Reviews are bad, go to another dealership, right? That's what the consumer journey has become. It's become very much longer, I want to say. This is a slide from Google. It's become very unpredictable, right? And we see that by the 15% of search queries are unique. Even Google is seeing new ways people are searching for information every single day. 15% of the searches are new ways to search for information. All right, before we begin and jump into the slides about the actual SEO and how you can improve your SEO, I just want to make a quick distinction so we're all on the same page with everything. So traditionally, if you've heard agencies pitch SEO over the last 10 years, and SEO has been around when the Google started, September 1998. I think SEO started September 1998. It's been around ever since Google's been around. But more recently, it's kind of separated, right? So this is what was traditional SEO for the last 22 years. And this is kind of newer, but both are really, really important. And depending what kind of business you are, each one will be more or less important to you. So again, to separate them out, the top is what's called in the SEO world, the Google Local Pack. So this is powered by Google. For consumers, they see it as Google Maps. And I did this search, by the way, two days ago. This is coffee shops near Midtown Hilton. So I searched for coffee shops near here, so this is as relevant as possible. And this is actually called the Google Local Finder. So if you do this search and you click the View All button there, that's actually a tool that Google themselves and people in the SEO community call the Google Local Finder. And if you click that, you can actually see all the maps results, not just this little snippet. So for example, maybe you're number 4, right? And you need just a little bit more to start showing up there. You'll be able to see by going there and see your rankings there. The area below that is what I would call the traditional SEO, and that's coming up in Google search results. Still equally important, right? If you're a coffee shop, you kind of want to be in both, right? You want to be in the maps, you want to be here, and then you want to be in more specialized searches. Like we talked about earlier, search patterns have become more unpredictable. There's people searching in different ways. It's become very long tail, right? People won't just search local coffee shops or coffee shops near Midtown Hilton. They're gonna search for, I don't know, minority-owned business coffee that offers these kind of grinds or open these hours, right? The searches have become like huge. So you wanna be not only checking yourself for things like this, but really the long tail stuff, and the local results are more tailored the Google organic results are more tailored to the long tail searches. Cool, so today we're gonna talk about both those sections. I'm gonna tell you what goes into the ranking signals for each one, right? So it's the big mystery of SEO. How does SEO work? What do I have to do? It's always big mystery, no one knows, no one will tell you. Agencies will say, pay me and your rankings will go up. What are you gonna do? I can't tell you. Today I'm gonna tell you, so you're in the right place. We'll go through the actual ranking signals, or at least as close to them as we could get without working at Google and having a secret information. And you'll see what you could actually do and walk away today, and what you could focus on to actually start ranking better on Google. All right, we're gonna start off with local pack results, so the Google Maps, so the first section up there. Cool, so this chart represents what signals have what importance in the Google algorithm for Google Maps. For those of you taking pictures, you're too early, there's no information up there. It's just a pie chart. So hold your phones, almost. Who wants to take a guess at what 33%? What's the most important thing to rank better for Google Maps? Guesses?
Address.
Address. Close. So it's actually it's a little bit intuitive. It's your Google My Business listing. So A, having it, right, which makes sense, but B, having it optimized. So if you don't have a Google My Business listing, you won't be in those results. Like, that's it. That's just how it works. The more optimized it is, the better you'll rank in those results. Number two is reviews. So reviews is an interesting one. So reviews gets calculated in a couple different ways. Number one, you want to have more reviews, of course. You want to have good reviews, 5-star reviews, right? Number three, Google actually analyzes the sentiment and the content of your reviews. So if you have a bunch of reviews that are 5-star and there's no content in them, they're not going to help you much. If you have maybe a 3-star review, but someone said your service is amazing, that's actually going to help you more than having a 5-star with no information. Google analyzes the sentiment and the content. So if someone mentioned in the content that you had very good coffee of a certain variety, it'll help you come up in maps better for that kind of coffee. Make sense? Cool. Number three is on-page. So on-page is very encompassing. On-page is, first of all, having a website. You can't have on-page if you have a website. And I know there's been a recent trend of people moving away from having websites and just having a Facebook page, Instagram page. If you don't have a website, you won't have that on-page data, and you're not going to rank as well. It's unfortunately the way it is. It's interesting. The trend has been very strongly, especially for small businesses. You know, at some point, do I need a website? Do I need to maintain a website? I'm just going to be on social media, Facebook, Instagram. And then Facebook goes down all day. And then everyone's calling in, I need a website, right? So I'm not gonna, we work with Facebook, Instagram, with Google, we work with everyone, so I'm not gonna make any negative public statements against any service, but at the end of the day, having a website gives you ownership over something, so you own that domain. In most cases, you wanna own that domain. I've seen people who work with an agency and they're like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to own that. The agency owns everything. You wanna own your domain, you wanna own your website, and without it, you're not gonna have that, and even for Google Maps, you're not gonna do well. What else? So on-page is also encompasses technical things. So you want to make sure metas, headers. I won't bore you with the technical SEO. That in itself is a 3-hour session. But there's very technical things that you should be doing on your website to help Google find you and get all your information. So you want to make sure you're doing that. And on-page actually also encompasses content. And the way it works is you want to have as much unique content as possible on your website, and we're going to go into content a little bit later. Links are pretty straightforward, so links have become more important. So you want relevant, authoritative websites to link to you. That makes sense? If you have a lot of spammy websites linked to you, Google doesn't care. They used to. Used to be a lot of black hat SEO. I get a lot of spam links, now I'm doing well. You want relevant, authoritative websites linked to you. So if you're a car dealership and you have coffee shops linked to you, that might not help too much. Make sense? And then at the same time, you have CNN linked to you, it's gonna help a lot. And then the other pieces are behavioral, citation, personalization. There's a couple of things that go into that. So behavioral is metrics on your website. So if someone gets to your website and leaves right away because your website's terrible, that's gonna ding you, right? Your website doesn't load at all on mobile. Google takes that into account now more and more. And later on, by the way, after I go through the slides, I'll talk about where the data comes from. So this is not just so you know, it's not pie charts I just made up and just like threw something at the wall. 15%. I'll go through where the data comes from. Citations are directories, also less and less important. And personalization is the one you probably could affect the least. So personalization is device, country, language, right? If the person has Spanish-speaking location set on their computer, they're searching Google in Spanish. If your website's completely in English, it probably won't come up. So that's the small piece, that's personalization. Cool, so now that we define those, I'll give you a couple of takeaways and then in the interest of time, we'll keep moving through them. And again, each one of these slides could be broken up into its own presentation. SEO stuff gets very, very complex. There's a lot of SEO industry experts at full time just learn this stuff and the technical stuff, and it's very complex, but I think put the kind of rephrase into these parameters. I think it hopefully you guys have some takeaways of what you could do when you go home to help your organic search rankings. All right, so these are just takeaways. So after I define, we just went to go and define what each one is. Google My Business is the most influential to be in Google Maps. No surprise there, right? You have no Google My Business, you won't be in Google Maps. What's surprising is that it's actually doubled, and I'll show you the trends in the next slide. But Google My Business has become more important, so make sure not only do you have it, go in there and fill everything in, right? Fill out that about you section, put in some pictures in there, get customers to leave reviews. It's super, super, super important. Actually, it's 33% important. Reviews on page and links are all tied for number 2. Citations are still important. The biggest surprise I get from people talking about SEO over the last couple of years is that social doesn't matter, right? If you guys notice, social is not there at all. For those who have followed SEO, it was slightly important a couple of years back, but these days social doesn't matter. So I get that question very often. Is it gonna help my SEO if I make a Facebook profile, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is? The answer is no. So very, very popular question, and before kind of mattered, so it's very hard to answer. It matters a little bit, but not here. But if you did Google Plus profile, which now doesn't exist, it mattered a little bit. It doesn't matter anymore. So it's important in its own right for different reasons, but not for SEO. So this is more of a just interesting to see. This is all the different categories we looked at over time. So over time, Google My Business has become more important. Again, not only having it, but having it optimized. You want to have the correct category. You want your products listed in there. You want as much information in your Google My Business as you could get in there. You see social stopped being important 3 years ago or so. And overall, everything's become a little bit less important with your Google My Business becoming more important. Make sense? Did I lose anyone? We're all here? Perfect. All right, number 2, so localize organic results. So outside of maps, these are super important. Depending on your business, it really depends. You could be getting traffic from both. If you're a national business, you'll get more from here than from maps. If you're a national business with a lot of physical location, you'll get more traffic from Google My Business from the maps if you optimize it correctly. So it depends on where you are, but I would not skip either one of them. I think they're both super important, and the optimizations for both of them are actually very similar. All right, same game again. Anyone want to take any guess? Either, you could even, I'll take either the 32 or 31. What do you guys think is the #1 most important ranking factor for your Google localized results, so that the actual organic listings. Keywords. Anyone else?
Local people looking?
Local people looking. Close. So it's all kind of in the same category. So the most important are actually on-page and links. And they become more and more important. As a company, it's something we've done for the focus of our SEO product for a long time, because it was kind of easy for us to see the direction everything was going. But the most important thing to make sure you're coming up high on Google organic results is on page, which again, fixing technical things and having a lot of content. Number 2, the links, right? Between that, it's 63%. So we see all the same categories as before, and I'm not going to define them again since we went through them. Literally the same categories, but they're all slightly less important. Your Google My Business here is not as important, right? It's still important, but not as much. So to come up in go back. To come up here, you don't really need Google My Business, right? If you're a national business that doesn't have a physical location and you're just focusing on those results, you don't need Google My Business. All right, I'll go through the bullet points. As we just saw, so on page is the most influential ranking factor, followed by links. And then everything else comes after. And again, behavioral are people on your website, right? How the experience on your website, and that slowly has become more important over time. There was a period where Google wasn't tracking that data at all, right? You could have the worst website, you could still rank well. Google has really evolved to be more customer-centric and to try to push websites to have better experiences, because if someone goes on Google and searches for a plumber, and then clicks on the plumber website and nothing loads because they're on mobile and that plumber doesn't have a mobile website, that's very bad for Google, right? So they've evolved to kind of use behavioral signals along with GMB, and reviews and citations are still important. And I forget if I went into detail on citations, but citations are directories. So citations are your Yelps, your Foursquare, all the online directories. And you'll see in the next slide, they become less important. So you still want to maintain those. At this point, I would say it's most important to be consistent across all of those. You want to use the same phone number, same information, make sure the profiles have updated information, right? If your Yelp has an old phone number that doesn't dial anywhere, that's probably bad. But more so, I think you just want to be consistent across all of them, as opposed to maybe 5-10 years ago where they were a lot more important and there were SEO companies that would solely focus on citations. Like, we will just get you citations. And again, last bullet point, social signal is not here at all, right? Again, social was kind of part of this, but it's not at all for this. So this is how we look over time. So we have the on-page and the links becoming more and more important. If you could take a look at it even, I don't know, 2015 to 2020, right, over the last 5 years, how much it's gone up. So what that means is Google's looking at your link profile. So again, it's very tough to build links. It has to be an outbound effort, either by you or by an SEO company, but that's the most important part, right? If you do press releases themselves won't help you, but if CNN picks it up and they write an article about you, it will help you a lot. So you wanna have authoritative, relevant websites linked to you. Google guidelines are you can't trade links anymore. Trading links was very popular back in the day. You can't buy links. Paid links are against Google policy. Are they gonna know you paid for that link? Maybe, maybe not, but I promise you don't want to be penalized by Google. So it really has to be an organic effort, and there's ways to do it. There's tools they'll show you. You could look at your competitors and see who links to them, right? You could see if, let's say you run a limo company. Look up your competitor. JFK's website actually has a section that lists New York limos, right? So you call up the JFK website, try to get a hold of someone and get them to link to you. That's kind of what link building has evolved into. In the SEO world, link building is also kind of a negative word at this point. We don't use link building anymore. It's now outbound marketing. So we've moved past link building, but that's what you'd want to do. And content, again, is super, super important. I'll show you an example of content. Right, next slide, perfect. So this is a slide that I've been presenting at automotive conferences since, well, it's a list for 2018 cars, so at least 3 years. The reason I present this is it really highlights how important content is. So I search, and this is an actual search I did 3 years ago for a luxury sedan. And you see on top you have US News, US News, US News, Car and Driver, Edmunds. So Car and Driver and Edmunds are the only automotive specific websites there. US News isn't. Why does US News rank higher than Car and Driver for this keyword, right? That's might not be the $1 million question, but probably close. For Car and Driver and Edmunds, it would be super, super valuable for them to be number one. Number one, you could take third-party tools and see linking profiles and see who has more links. I promise you, US News will have more of a link authority and domain authority than Car and Driver and Edmunds, because they just do so much more and they do a lot of news-like stuff that gets picked up by the press. So number one, that's that, right? But more importantly, and the reason I do this example, if US News did not produce the piece of content, 14 best luxury cars, 10 best luxury large cars, the content you see up there, if they did not create those pages of content, they would not be in the search. No matter how authoritative they are, no matter how much they might have about cars on their homepage, they wouldn't rank against Edmunds or Car and Driver in this case if they didn't have those pages of content. So a good way for small businesses to think about content, it's really, content gives you the opportunity to come up in search results. If you don't have an article or a blog post or whatever it is on your website, we'll go back to a coffee shop example, about a specific coffee roast, and someone searches for it, you will not come up no matter what, right? So you need to create content to have the opportunity to show up in search results. And then if you're doing all the other things that we looked at on the other slide, most important being link building and having other sites linked to you, the more sites linked to you, the more authoritative you become and the higher you show up in the ranking. So again, to go back around through this, you want to be creating content to give you the opportunity to show up, and you could really think about how do consumers find me, right? When you think about what content to create, or when you're coming up with a content schedule, how are people going to find me online? Where are they searching? What specifically? And you could look at search that and see what they're searching, and then create content around that. And that's again, each piece of content gives you the opportunity to show up, and then you're doing link building to show up higher. In this case, US News did a good job with both. All right, so as we wrap up those sections, and this you could take, everyone could take a picture. No, this is very good data. Again, I'll send you the deck, but this is the good summary snapshot view of what we talked about over the last 20 minutes and what goes into each different part of SEO. I'll pause a little bit for all the paparazzis out there taking shots. All right, so next up, and I know there's still cameras out, so I'll start talking, but I'll leave the slide up for another 30 seconds for the pictures. Next up, let's talk about the data. So this is all well and good, but we all know Google doesn't disclose any of this information. No one has ever. What I find interesting is that there's definitely people at Google that know this exactly, right? But no one's ever talked about it. I don't know what Google does to dissuade them from doing it, because people leave Google, right? Like if you work at Google, you learn this really secretive stuff, and then you leave and you could publish your book and make millions, but you don't. So whatever Google's doing to keep this secret, they're doing a very good job. So where do we get all this information? So there's actually a local ranking factor survey, and if you Google local ranking factor survey, you'll find all the information on it. The data I shared with you guys today is from 2020. The 2021 data just came out a couple days ago, but it's still in the process of being published. So I didn't bother putting it in here, but mostly because it hasn't really changed. There's been a lot of changes in past years. 2020 to 2021 hasn't changed. So where does this data come from? So this gentleman on your left, David, started this idea in 2008, coming up with a ranking survey, because how do we know what Google values? There's a lot of individuals who really spend their entire lives focusing on technical SEO, local SEO. They probably know it best. But asking one individual or a couple individuals, you'll probably get some skewed results, right? If you work only in automotive, for example, Greg up there in the list on your right, who I met last week, is a great guy, very, very good at SEO and speaks about SEO, but he focuses on automotive, right? So the idea that was created, and Darren Shaw took over this survey now, is to survey the top experts in local search for that given year. Most of them say the same, some of them move around. Those are the people on your right that were part of the data survey that I shared with you guys before. These aren't company owners, these aren't salespeople, these are people who live and breathe technical SEO, and you kind of gather all of their collective mindset to try to pinpoint the ranking factors of Google for that specific year. And from all my research and from all my time doing SEO over the last 20 plus years, it's been the most accurate and useful way to really know what's important to Google today. All right. Perfect. So now you did all your SEO. Everyone here in the room, you guys went home. Hopefully your pipe in the kitchen was not leaking, or you called the plumber and fixed it really quickly. You sat down on your computer, you did everything we talked about. You did the link building, content writing, improved your GMB, got reviews, reached out to clients who left your review before, asking them to update it with more content. You did everything. How do you measure results, right? For a very, very long time in the SEO world, results were ranking based. And what I mean by that is the clients would call us up and say, when am I going to be number one, right? That was the most popular question for sales, project management, I think anything related to SEO, or if you're spending a little less and you're not as ambitious, when am I gonna be number two, right? It was all rankings driven. The problem with ranking driven is about 4 years ago, Google really personalized all their results. If I take out my cell phone now and do a Google search, and you guys take out your cell phone and do a Google search, we'll all get different results. If I take out my cell phone and my laptop and do the exact same search on my same exact pre-logged in Google account, I'm gonna get different results. So the problem is it's very hard to do where do I rank, or stay at home and keep searching and searching and searching it, because it's your personalized results. What's also interesting is if you keep searching your keywords that try to get yourself to come up, right, in search results, keep searching it and you never click it, Google will start ranking you lower and lower for you personally, because they assume that the content's not relevant because you're not clicking it. So for people who love to do that and then say, why are my rankings going down, it's often personalized. And that's a very, very, very common question we get also. Call in, oh, my rankings are dropping. I keep searching it 10 times a day and it keeps dropping. So measuring results is very important, right? Anytime you invest time, money, right? Even if you do it yourself, you're investing time. SEO is ultimately about hours. As an agency, that's how we sell it. Literally, you buy hours and we'll do all of the work. You could do a piece, you do whatever you want. We literally sell it by the hours. It's all about putting the hours of creating content, outbound link building, fixing your Google My Business. So no matter what, you're spending either tons of hours or tons of dollars or both. So it's very important to measure results so you understand the ROI and what you're getting out of it. So there's two ways to measure results, or at least there's a lot of ways to measure results. Two ways that I measure results. Number one, I really like Google Analytics. So for those who have been around a very, very long time in the internet space, which in the internet space is only 20 years, Google Analytics used to be a different company. So it used to be a company called Urchin, which at the time there was only 3 data analytics companies that provided you website information. Urchin was by far the best. They were super, super expensive, like thousands of dollars per month. And they were by far the best. I used them despite the cost. Google bought them, made them better, and made it free. So a lot of people take Google Analytics for granted, but it's a really, even the free version is really an enterprise-grade product. So in Google Analytics, you look at organic search traffic. So instead of focusing on keywords, and again, we just talked about earlier, there's tons of keywords, right? You're checking one keyword when we know there's, first of all, billions of searches. 15% of people are searching things differently every single day. And you're searching one keyword, checking your rankings. Obviously, that's not the best way to measure ROI. I really like organic search traffic, your total traffic you're getting from organic search, and that's what this is. This is not even Google, this is all of organic search. And if you want to drill down further, you could see your time on site, you could see your conversion actions, right? And my form fills from organic search traffic increasing. So Google Analytics is really powerful and usually is my go-to. If you're actively doing SEO, that's what your results are gonna look like, right? If you're doing content, link building, optimizations, your SEO should be going up year over year, right? It might not month over month. There's seasonality and there's always peaks and valleys. Year over year, if you're paying for SEO or you're doing SEO yourself and it doesn't look like that, you should really, well, you should stop by our booth, I'll have the number later, and get an SEO audit, but you should really look into it. It should really look like this. And again, a lot of agencies sugarcoat it, that's always a straight line up. It'll never be a straight line up, right? Because algorithms change, contents change, people start searching differently. Your competitors, right? Your competitors are also doing SEO. It's great that if everyone standing still, I'll do SEO, I'll go up, but everyone is not standing still. So always be peaks and valleys, but ultimately year over year, you should be increasing, especially if you look at longer periods, like take a whole quarter and compare it to a quarter a year ago. Number 2, Google Search Console. So this used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. They rebranded, I want to say 2 years ago, to Google Search Console. So Google Search Console is free, like most things with Google. It's free to you guys, but they collect the information from you, so it's not ultimately free, but it's free to use. So Google Search Console, and you can look it up, it's free to sign up, you link it up to your website, they give you all the data. The reason Google Search Console is good to use along with Google Analytics is Google Search Console will give you information above Google Analytics. So what I mean by that is Google Analytics will only give you people who go to your website. Google Search Console will give you impressions. So you can see how many times you're showing up in search results, which is one step before clicking to your website. So, for example, this is for a realtor that we work with, and this, by the way, this time period, seasonality should be against this, right? In real estate, it gets worse September, October versus August, not better, but we're actively doing SEO, so impressions go up. So impressions is how many times you're coming up in search results. Clicks go up. It shows you your average click-through rate, so it gives you an opportunity to fix things. If all of a sudden your click-through rates are going down, that means the titles that are showing up in Google for your pages are not as relevant to people as they used to be. And it gives you average position. Again, average position is kind of like, am I ranking number 1, number 2? On average, he's ranking 35.6 for his 10,000 keywords, so not necessarily a metric I would spend a lot of time on, but the impressions and clicks are super important. Perfect. So that was the end of the slide. So a couple of quick things. Number 1, Smart Sites is here at booth 3212. So if you go to the exhibition area, it's not up the stairs, it's straight through the doors and to the right. And definitely stop by and talk to our folks there. We're doing free audits, we're doing free consultation, and you get a $10 gift card for scheduling a meeting. And we have light bulbs and stuff to give away. So definitely encourage you to stop by. Both me personally and our company are really in business to help small businesses. If that means giving free consultations and then explaining SEO to you and then you wind up doing SEO yourself, that's completely fine. That's why I'm here on stage explaining how to do everything. So I want to empower you guys to be able to do as much of it yourself as you can, and then we're here whenever we could help with an audit or whatever, anything we could help with. Number 2, if you take out, now you can take out your phones. If you take out your phones and you go into picture mode, you're not going to take a picture, you're just going to go into picture mode, and you go, if you highlight that area, it'll pop up a link to click to LinkedIn, and you guys can connect with me, and then you can request a deck, and I'll shoot out the deck to you guys. Or if you have any questions or follow-ups or anything like that. If you're more advanced, you could go into LinkedIn, press on the right, there will be a little mini QR thing on the right of the search box on LinkedIn, and from there you could scan, it'll connect right away. But yeah, definitely connect with me. Once I'm off the stage, I'll accept all the connections. More than happy to have discussions or send slides or anything I can help with. And with that, I don't know if we have tons of time, but I'll open it up for Q&A if anyone has any questions. Yes? So if you're on Google My Business, they want you to have a physical address. Does it have to be a storefront where people can visit? Like we're on Google My Business for our agency. We have a physical office, although we don't use it now because of COVID. We don't have a storefront. So as long as you have a physical address, that's fine. Any negative review, the go-to is to respond to it. You want to respond to all the negative reviews.
Yeah,
Yes?
that's a good question. Well, I have a store, and I'm going to close it for COVID. So getting rid of.
So it gets tricky. Yeah. So you don't want to get rid of your Google My Business, and you don't want to put this business as closed either. I think there's in between categories that like temporarily physically close, or there's.
I don't know what address to put because I don't want people coming to where I'm working or
Yeah, so I think you would have to use that address, but in your Google My Business, you would have to, there's a way to select that you're not accepting visitors because of COVID or something like that. That would be, you have to keep the address. If you have no address, you can't have a Google My Business by Google's policies. You use your address and the profile. You could always change your address. You could always change your addresses, for sure. Addresses, they don't really care about it. Keep in mind, Google results are localized. So if you want people to find you, they're physically far apart and you want people to find you by your geographically close to your physical store, they won't if you put the other address. Yes, question? Yes. Yes.
the discount code working?
On what basis did I select the keywords? If the competition would be like 1 each, and some of them are like 2,000 from 500.
So you'd want, that's a good question. So she has earrings, and which keywords do you rank for, and how do I put a lot of keywords in each specific product? In theory, you'd want to create variations of your products with different keywords. You don't want to keyword stuff specifically. And if that's hard to do, the other approach would be to write blog posts about it. You could say just butterfly earrings, but let's say they're a certain flag or something. You write a blog post about those specific things you did, and that'll start ranking. So your product might not rank, but your blog post will start ranking. It's tough. So if you're with that kind of product, you want to be doing Google Shopping ads, which are not free. They'll show a little bit for free. You want to do pay ads. They have feed specification. I think the title can't be more than 80 characters. I think that's the only specification. So I would follow that versus just having keywords. And I wouldn't. There's a fine balance with making Google happy and ruining the user experience, right? You don't want to make your title of your product stuffed with keywords so much that the consumer doesn't know what they're looking at, what they're buying. So there's definitely a balance. Yes. Yes. Yes.
A bunch of websites online are even talking about giving you opportunities to get cited and get a reputable newspaper.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on buying those services?
Good question. So the question is there's services online that you pay for, and they'll get you links by publishing things about it. Google doesn't allow paid links. Again, will they find out? Maybe, maybe not. It gets a little tricky. Generally speaking, you don't want to pay for links, or even if you are paying for links, you don't want all your links.
It's relevant to today's discussion.
If that makes sense.
If you
So
click the
try to
QR,
sprinkle it in. A lot of those services are scams, by the way. So you gotta be careful. Yes.
As far as like a website that has kind of a blog on it, does it hurt you if each post in this is on like one page, or if then it's a separate link that then it's you got say 100 posts, so it's all on one feed? That's hurting you. Then if you have 100 different pages, but it's the same content.
So most blog service, not ProScribe, but content. Do you know what content system you use for it?
Well, so I promoted my entire site, so it's not using a blog, so
Okay.
that's why I'm asking.
Okay, so most like WordPress, Wix, whatever it is, they're done in a way that even if it shows up on that one page, you click in them and they're individual pages. That's the best practice because that one page you created will rank for some things, but again, you don't have the individual pages to rank for that content, and each individual page would have the opportunity to rank otherwise. So for sure, I would break up each. And yes.
Even if say like the user doesn't actually like to go to the separate page and then you see it all in one.
I would still make them. the way WordPress would do it is it shows up in the one and read more and you get separate page. That's the best practice. If you coding from scratch wise, it's the most difficult to do. So in a lot of cases, I would maybe think about switching to a content system that does that for you, so you're not reinventing the wheel. But yes, you will see a huge increase in organic traffic, splitting them into individual pages. And when you do that, keep an eye on the URL. So the URL should probably have the same text as your H1 header, if that makes sense. So the heading into URL. I wouldn't just do them page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. All the CMSs do that for you, most of it for you. But since you're coding yourself, watch out for that as well. Yes?
Question now that Apple's releasing a product that block tracking, how would you combat that?
Yeah, so that's so I talk a lot about paid search. So that's a big conversation, paid search. So the question was, now that Apple blocks iOS has privacy controls, where if someone is tracking you, it will prompt you to opt in or opt out, and 80% are opting out. Right? The pop-up comes up. Do you want to be tracked? I opt into everything, right? But I live in this space. 80% are opting out. That's affecting paid search. So Google Analytics is first-party data, so you're not affected by that. So it doesn't affect SEO at all. Paid search, especially Facebook ads, affects it a huge amount. And I'll tell you what's happening now with Facebook ads. And they downplay it, of course, and we work with Facebook, and I'm recording this, so I gotta be careful what I say. But what's happening with Facebook is, let's say you have a store that sells clothing to women. Before, you ran Facebook ads that target women, and you would get 100% women. Right now, today, you target women, you're gonna get 20% men. Right, so you lose targeting. So now you're getting a much worse targeting set. Nothing you can do about it. Facebook's working on replacement for the cookie, right? It's supposed to be out. It was supposed to be out last month. It'll be out eventually. They won't just like, right? They won't just like, all right, we give up. Don't advertise on Facebook anymore. They'll come up with a replacement for a cookie, but right now it's less accurate. But more importantly, you lose conversion data. So you show someone an ad, they click on it, they come to your website, they make a purchase. Tracking is disabled. It won't revert back to Facebook. Facebook doesn't know that that person drove that sale, and you can't use the AI machine learning to optimize on that. That's the bigger thing. Very big issue in Facebook advertising space, but no one seems to care because people are spending more and more money on Facebook. But we're seeing huge issues, especially if you're like a store that only wants to target women. You can't now. You're gonna get the men in here. Yes. 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 It's all ours. It's all ours. It's all ours. So for us, we sell. It depends on how competitive your category is. So if you stop by our booth, they can look it up and actually tell you. But literally, our most popular SEO package is 50 hours, $50 an hour, $2,500. We'll put the 50 hours to do all of this. If you put it twice more, you'll start ranking. It's literally how many hours over time, right? Do you want 50, you're willing to commit 50 hours a month for 12 months, or you gotta do double in 6 months? It's literally, all of it's out. It's putting the work in. There's no shortcuts in SEO. There's black hat SEO and gray hat SEO. I've seen a lot of companies get penalized. Macy's got penalized. Macy's got caught a couple of years ago doing black hat SEO. Google took them off search results. They lost like a quarter of their online revenue for a month. So there's less and less ways to game the system, but it's very dangerous, so I wouldn't play with it. Outside of gaming the system, it's all putting the hours in. Yes?
They almost immediately changed your slides, so a lot of us did not get your QR code. Like they put it back to the one that's for
Perfect. So there you go. And I have physical business cards for people who still have business cards.
We have a question.
Yes, question.
You mentioned the importance of local search results.
Yes.
Right? What if your business caters nationally and globally, and you're not necessarily only looking for local clients?
Yes. So nationally, let me go back. Can't go back. National can't do anything anymore. National, the actual search results are more important than Google Maps. There's ways around it, right? You could actually create multiple Google Maps, depending what your business does, but you could create multiple Google Maps locations, if you get individual addresses, they send you a postcard to verify it. So you could do PO boxes. You could do a PO box in different cities, and you could say, I don't know, let's say you sell the butterfly earrings, but you want to be localized. You could do butterfly earrings Manhattan, butterfly earrings Atlanta, and set up addresses on Google My Business with a PO box. So there's ways around it, but for any national business, the actual search results will be a lot more important than Google Maps. Cool. Any more questions? Business cards. Yes. We do UI UX. At this point, I'm not as familiar with our hiring needs, so we're gotten big. Thank you. We're 250 people, so I'm not on top of everything as much. But you stop by our booth and ask some of the folks there.
No problem, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yes. Yes. Multi-vendor sites. Nothing's difficult. We built a website for a company that buys, sells, trades gold, platinum, silver coins. Prices change on the fly every half a second based on commodity prices. And when someone buys any precious metals, it creates a hedge in their bank account in case prices fluctuate. So everything's possible. We build all kinds of websites. Everything's possible. Stop by our booth. They'll help you out. Yes. Yes, of course. Email, LinkedIn, anything else into the slides. Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. This is great. I live in Franklin. Yeah. Oh, cool. Nearby. Our office is in Paramus, also nearby. Yeah, I'll jump off. I have to grab one more.
Question, what about online store only with
You still create content. You still links content and variations of your products. You want to have as many variations of your products as you can because each one's an opportunity to come up with search. Yes. Sure, send me an email. I'm LinkedIn, yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'll get you a discount once I join. Yeah, send me and stop by our booth. They could also give you some information.
Okay.